Let's we now talked about programming for an institution. You've recently
just want to say one thing more about that, because I perceive it this way. When we program, or when we've been programming, we haven't only been programming with a sensitivity towards the material and towards the actors and then towards the age groups and so on, but also towards the house in itself. Where do we produce what, and how do we use the rest of the framework of the house? For instance, transforming, for instance, sometimes the whole playing area, transforming the actual room in some way to make that feeling of togetherness or that feeling of distance. For instance, when we did the Never-Ending Story, what we did was put up like a see-through canvas all over the stage, so you could never actually, you could project images on the front of that canvas or that bit of textile that was on front of it, and you could see through it and you could close it. So it was like a kind of a book that you could close and open. So, and you would think that doing that sort of give a barrier between the performance and the audience. But in a way, when it then opened and you had this fantastic imagery, something else happened, another type of contract. Or another time, the whole room will be opened up so that that one can be interactive, the children can take part in the performance and so on. And that is a part of the whole aesthetics and the whole way of starting the conversation with the audience.
So does that mean that a writer working for young audiences, perhaps particularly, need to consider the space that their text is going to be performed in?
Well, I don't think we need to do anything besides being very aware of what we want to write. But of course, that could be a good thing. It could be good to write into your text some way of, at least to give a hint or a sign, some kind of guidelines to the ones who are producing it, that I can envision this being played out outdoors, or and I don't think that has to be realistic, because let's face it, when you write something, what you do is to try and transport the reader into a kind of feeling or emotional state, or to give them ideas, to have a play that actually ends up being played in a black box and insist this is taking place in the wild woods in the Amazon, and then giving the feeling, how can we produce some kind of echo of that setting or that site into the actual performance.
Let's talk about programming a little bit more, but now programming for a festival. You've just programmed or been part of the programming committee for a festival called Funn, which is a festival for young people, theatre for young audiences, organised by Asitage Norway, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right.
Yeah. Is that a very different experience to programming for a house?
Yeah.
In what way?
Well, first of all, it was a very interesting experience. First of all, is you're just programming for a few days, and you are not programming. Sometimes you can have an idea of things that can be made specifically for the festival, but usually it's a kind of shopping. You shop performances that are already being made, or you shop for speakers or visual artists that you want to sort of fill out the programming, but they are already there, and you just sort of try and pull them into the whole box. So it's very different. And for the Funn Festival, there was an international committee in the Artistic Council. So we had Danish, Dutch, German, and Norwegian curators or programmers together. And what we had to do was sit and find a framework for our programming. Usually you don't do that. It was very, very good exercise to actually decide, why do we want to do this festival? What's the point of the programming? What's the point of the programming right now? And what kind of conclusions or choices can we draw on behalf of that thinking that we've done?
Did you feel, when you were collaborating with these other programmers, did you get a sense of, like, were you very, did you disagree a lot about which things were important to program and not? Yeah, did you? Or was it a smooth process?
I guess when we sort of tried to build a framework, try to like a few sentences. This is why we're going to program the Sun Festival because of this, and then we had to discuss what's happening in the theatre for children and young right now, and then not just in Norway but internationally, because what we wanted to do was to make an international festival for both children and young as an audience, and for the whole theatre making community of Norway, and of course hopefully even Europe, at least Northern Europe. We wanted them to come to Kristiansand and discuss just this because it was important for us. And I think actually the main thing then was to do like an analysis. What is it that occupies not only children but also theatre makers? And what we realized that we have a situation now where theatre makers are asking themselves, why are we making theatre for children and young? What's the point in it? And a new sort of direction when we're starting looking at the audience, not looking at the artist, but looking at the ones that we're actually doing it for. So we wanted to find out a way of making a festival that took in productions and artists and even visual artists who are interested in the audience and in the audience participation. Not an interactive festival, but participation based. And when we agreed on that, then of course we had to give each other leverage. So the Dutch came in with the Dutch point of view, and we came with ours, and it was more about like, I've seen this is good, you've seen this is good, and how does it fit in our framework?
Did you notice any differences between between the different countries, or are the differences just individual in terms of different people? Do you have any sense of Dutch theatre in a moment is very into this, whilst Norwegian theatre is really into that?
Well, we ended up programming quite a lot of Dutch performances, so maybe Dutch theatre is very much into this. There is a very high level of interest for the audience in Dutch theatre, and they have a lot of productions that are quite small and easy to handle and to take on tour. I think that's because of the way they produce, while Scandinavian theatre, at least the bigger productions for children and young, are very sort of set in the theatres and cannot be moved away from them. Usually they're not even touring productions. So there's both practical and sort of maybe even ideological reasons because of that. I felt also that the German theatre in some way had some of the same kind of flexibility in it, but at the same time it seemed like there's a bigger debate around the aesthetics around children and young. While the Dutch has sort of moved with the times, the Germans are in a very sort of intrinsically discussing very hard and with very different point of views. What is theatre for young children and young going to be? Is it going to be good for the children, or is it just going to be for the children in our capacity of relating to the world they live in? In a way, is it going to be pedagogical or ethically or morally building the children's character, or making them able to have a good life, stand up against inequality, be liberating in some way? Or should it just be theatre that is there as any other theatre? And that's a very big conflict in Germany at the moment. So yes, we could see some of those differences. And also, in a way, maybe a little bit of the laziness in Scandinavian theatre, that we just produce children for theatre for children and young because that's what we do. It's a good thing to do, but we haven't really. We're just at the beginning of discussing what does it mean, and what is the audience place in it, and what does it mean to do it in a time with a lot of other types of culture for children and young that are not theatre based. So, what is it that the theatre can offer? What is the live aspect, for instance?